Hello everyone and welcome to Photoshop. So in this brief tutorial I'd like to just go over the interface so you can get comfortable with all of these panels. I have opened several images here. These are actually all past student examples. And the first thing I'd like just to point out is that when you have several files opened, they all open up as tabs up here at the top. So that's just something to note. And I can just click and go back around through all of them. So over here is our toolbar, and I can choose to have my toolbar long like this, or if you're working on a laptop, maybe you prefer to have it as a double column just by clicking on that little arrow here. So we'll be working with all of these different tools. They're actually kind of grouped somewhat in a type of order. We have things about moving and selecting and cropping, and then things that are more related to editing and then adding text or shapes, and the ones down here are for navigation. And what's pretty cool is as you hover over, as you can see, Photoshop gives you like a little bit of like a tutorial where you can click on Learn How and you can get a tutorial. So if there's something that you want to jump ahead and learn about, you can learn about right away from Photoshop. I'd like to point out how all of these tools have a little arrow underneath, right on the right hand corner. And what that means is that there are other tools embedded within. So if I click on it, and I can see that there were actually three tools here. The top tool that's showing is my dodge tool, but I could switch to my burn tool, and these two are actually opposite tools. So, or I could switch it to my sponge tool. All right, we'll go over what these different tools mean. All of these tools work with what's up here at the top called the options bar. So they all have default settings. So this one, for example, is my magnifying lens, or the zoom tool. And by default, it does that. It zooms in. If you look at it, you can see I have a little plus sign here. But if I wanted to switch it to zoom out, I could go up to my options bar and I could switch it to zoom out. So now it's a zoom out tool. Okay, also let's say if I take a paintbrush, for example, something you're going to be working with for one of your early projects. And if I want to try change the size of my paintbrush, I'm going to go up here to my options bar and I could change the size or the type of brush. I could change the opacity that it comes in, so on and so forth. So take a second and just kind of look through the toolbar. I am right clicking here to get these different tools. Take a second, look through these, and notice how when you click on one of them, what are the options that change up here in the options bar for you. The next thing is just going through here, File, under File, that's the sort of things that you would expect, where you could go to Open or Save, Save As. Under Edit, some of these things I'm going to encourage you to learn by keyboard shortcut, like the basic copy and paste. Check spelling is a thing in Photoshop that can be useful. We have one project that does involve typing in text. Different kinds of transformations will definitely be coming here. This is where you can rotate and do various types of transformations, including warping for the images on your different layers. Your preferences can be useful if, for example, you want to change your units. I'll show you where you get your rulers, but if you look at my rulers, they're in pixels. So this is just where you can change a lot of the basic preferences of how things are set up here. Under image, we'll definitely be going under here. For our first project, we'll be looking under image mode, image adjustments. We'll look here quite a bit. Image size, canvas, and image rotations. These are areas that we will come to a lot. We'll use them. Layer, we use these things a little bit, but I'm going to encourage you to use the icons that are on the layers panel, which I'll get to in a minute. But there are definitely some things here like the merging down, visible, that we'll be using. Under type, so you have a lot of type options. Under select, most of these things I'm going to ask you to learn as keyboard shortcuts. Filters we'll get to later on. I never go through all the filters because there's just a lot and I'd like you just to kind of explore and play with them. But later on I will talk about some of them. 3D we do not talk about in this class. If you take Digital Imaging 2, that'll get covered. Under View, some of these things I would encourage as keyboard shortcuts. Notice what's over here, by the way, that's the keyboard shortcut. But there are definitely things like rulers. So you can see that my rulers are visible because I have a check mark. If I wanted to turn my rulers off, I would just click it and my rulers disappeared. I can go and get them back again. And under show, there are some guides and things that we'll be using, especially for a project that has text. Under window, this shows you the panels, all of the possible panels that could be open and the ones that you do have open. So if you by accident closed your toolbar, for example, and I wanted to get that open, I'm going to go back and click on my tools, and I get it there. Okay, so there are a lot of different panels here, and most of which you don't want to have open at the same time because simply you want to have space to be able to work on your image. If you want to make sure that your layout looks like mine, go under Workspace and choose Essential Default. But you can also take a second and just see what happens. Let's say, for example, you took photography as a workspace. And what that's going to do is it's going to change the panels that are open. So it's going to say if you're working under photography, there are different things different panels that you use more often. Same thing for graphic and web or motion. Motion would be for doing some kind of animation or video, and so that panel opens up here. So I'm just going to switch back to the Essentials default. And under Help, that's just the stuff like additional Adobe tutorials and help. Over here, some of our panels are docked. So this is a panel I suggest having open all the time, the History panel. And so you can have it open by clicking on that little icon, and you can expand it, and then you could dock it again. I just clicked on this double arrow and that docks it again. The History panel is really useful. It records the last 25 steps that you made. So it's kind of your undo for the last 25 steps. You could also create like little snapshots, create new files from one of your states. I'll have videos where I talk about this a lot, but it's a really useful panel. And so just explore these. There are other panels that are embedded here. All of these panels you can click and you can drag and you can change how much screen real estate that they take up. The other one that we're going to use a lot will be the Layers panel. And I think actually the way I have my screen set up, okay, yeah, I have to move this up and you can see it. At the bottom of the Layers panel are a lot of icons, and this is what I'll really encourage you to use. You can get to these things by going to the main menu and choosing Layer and New. Most of the time I'll encourage you just to do a new layer by clicking on these icons over here. Alright, so feel free to just sort of play around. Notice like even in my layers here there were other tabs. You can take a panel, you can click it out, you could redock it when you get that kind of blue bar. When you hover, that means it's going to redock it. Just take a second, sort of mess with the panels and go through the windows and see what everything is. And then in the next video, we'll start getting into some more of the specifics and how to open your files in Photoshop.